Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Social Studies Department, for coming to my professional development presentation on writing to learn in the social studies. For an introduction activity, I would like you to write a cinquain poem about an important historical event or person using the following format. So if you look at your note sheet, the format is copied on there. You can pick any person or any event that you'd like. Line 1, just introduce the subject, so tell us what your poem's about. Line 2, write 2 words that describe the subject, so these are adjectives. For line 3, pick 3 words that describe actions that relate to the subject, so these are verbs. Line 4, 4 words that express an emotion or an attitude towards or about the subject, so you can give opinions in line 4. And line 5 is 1 word that sums up lines 1 through 4. So I'll give you 2 minutes to work on that. Again, any topic that you would like. Either a person, an event. Do I have any volunteers that would like to read their cinquain poem?
Yes, I would like to read it.
All right, take it away.
My subject is Malala Yousaf. My second line, I put fearless and brave. My third line, I put inspiring, mobile, injured. My fourth line, I put courage, confrontational, motivated, futuristic. And my last line, I just put hero.
Excellent. Anyone else? Anyone else?
I'll do it.
Frank?
I chose FDR. My second line is 4 terms. My third line is 1, saved and led. My fourth line is greatest, longest, most loved. And my fifth line is honored.
Excellent. Very good. So what did you like about completing the cinquain poem? And why might it be effective to use with our students? What do you think?
You really have to think about the subject, his whole, or the subject matter in a whole. You can't just think about what you read. You really have to think.
Right, so it causes our students to use all their knowledge on a particular event or subject at one time and pick and choose what they want to use. So this is synthesis. This is a higher order thinking skill. What else? Anything else? You guys can just call it
I
out.
like the fact that it breaks it up into like different categories. So you have emotional, you have actions, you have just describing, so the higher order is built right into it as well.
Right, and line 4, the emotional line, is really important because when students create this aesthetic or emotional response to the information, that's what really makes it stick. So poetry is a really great way for students to bring up emotions regarding something, and that'll help them remember the information much better. So an example I have for you is an actual student sample from a unit on World War II. A student wrote a cinquain about Adolf Hitler. So they wrote Adolf Hitler, German dictator, power-hungry, discriminating, dominate, cruel, harsh, inhumane, killer, and for their final line is mass murderer. So again, this is an 8th grade student example about Adolf Hitler from a unit on World War II. So it really causes students to be brief and quick and rely on a lot of knowledge about a larger topic and use these higher order thinking skills in an assignment that really should only take them 5 minutes. So it works very nicely. So today for this professional development presentation, we are going to start with an introduction, which you just did. You did the cinquain. We're going to talk about the what and why. So what is writing to learn and why should we incorporate it in our lessons every single day in social studies? Different strategies for writing at the beginning. So these would be good pre-class exercises. Writing in the middle. So these are longer assignments that you could use for an entire class period or extend it over class periods, and writing at the end. So these are good strategies for ticket out the doors or exit slips. And finally, we'll conclude. So the first question is, what is writing to learn? And writing to learn is an unfinished piece. So you don't take it through the revision process of the rough draft, the final draft, the proofreading, the editing, the peer editing. It's not graded on a rubric. Writing to learn is unfinished, it's unrevised, and it's unedited. It's brief, it's quick. It shouldn't take students weeks to complete. It should be a class period, maybe 2 at the most if you're doing a longer assignment. It can be fact-based or creative. And it's metacognitive, and all metacognitive is, it's a fancy word for teaching students how to think about their own thinking. So what thought processes are they using to write? And what are they drawing on when they're creating a writing piece? So why do we use writing to learn? First and foremost, it's in the Common Core. And as we start to see more emphasis on the Common Core standards, if you've looked at the social studies standards, they're kind of just lumped into literacy. So we don't actually have our own social studies standards in the Common Core. They're literacy skills for social studies. And in grades 6 through 12, there is an ELA literacy standard for students will write routinely over extended time frames and shorter time frames. So single sitting, a day or two, for a range of discipline-specific tasks, purposes, and audiences. So the shorter time frames piece is where the writing to learn comes in. It's something they should be doing every day. And also, it helps students practice writing skills in a non-threatening situation. And this is what I like about it, is when you give students an assignment like a cinquain, they're not worried about this big, long process. They're not sitting in front of an essay question saying, I don't know where to start, this is going to take me forever. They're not worried about the grade. They're using the comprehension skills, which is what we really want them to focus on in writing to learn. It's non-threatening and it's low stakes. Also, it encourages style exploration and risk-taking. So especially pieces that rely on emotion, students are more likely to take risks. And they're presented with many different types of writing. So a lot of our students, I've seen it all the time, I'm sure you guys see it. When you present them with an essay question, they're like, I hate writing. But that's not necessarily true. They just may have this fear over the longer writing piece, and a good way to get them used to writing these big research questions or essay questions is by having them write something little every single day. Also, it activates prior knowledge, so the cinquain is good for a pre-class. You can have them write a cinquain about something they learned in the previous class to kind of get them thinking and picking up from where you left off. It draws conclusions. It scaffolds conceptual understanding. So every student can do this differently. This is differentiated because every student chooses how they're going to interpret this assignment in their own way. And importantly, it utilizes those higher order thinking skills. So the analysis, the synthesis, and the evaluation. Especially line 5 of the cinquain, where the students sum up their conclusions about a person or an event, that's evaluation. They're judging a person or a situation based on what they know, and that's the highest level of critical thinking we can get our students to be at. All right, so writing at the beginning. Here you go. Here's the superhero social studies teacher. He looks like he needs to retire. And these are good pre-class exercises. So these are things that should take 2 to 5 minutes at the most. You can have it on the board for when the students come in. They can jump right into it. One strategy is called an admit slip, so it's kind of the opposite of an exit ticket. And if you look on your note sheet, I kind of summarized what the strategy is. But on here, I'm going to give you examples. So what an admit slip might sound like would be, what do you think was the most interesting about the lesson yesterday on the causes of World War II? So this one's pretty simple, just getting them to recall one piece of information from the day before. Crystal ball. The crystal ball is really good because you're getting them into those higher level thinking skills immediately because you're asking them to make a prediction. So for example, make a prediction about England's reaction to Hitler's invasion of Poland. Good. So the next one where we left off is the crystal ball. This one's really cool because you can have students make guesses about what you're going to teach that day. So again, the example was make a prediction about England's reaction to Hitler's invasion of Poland. And that'd be a really interesting question to give to our students because they would have to look back at agreements that were made and they would have to make a prediction based on what they know from before. Awards, this one's a lot of fun. So awards would be you make up a fictional award and the students have to decide who they would give it to. So for example, nominate a person or a group of people for a best effort on the American home front during World War II award. And then explain why you chose them. So not only would they have to pick someone for this award, but they have to give a rationale for why they picked them. And that one's a lot of fun. And you can even find ways to extend that writing assignment and make it into some kind of bigger project too. And finally is a cinquain, which you guys did today. We open with that. So writing in the middle, and these are longer activities. So these will probably take about a class period, maybe 2, but they shouldn't take longer than that. Again, they're unedited, they're not revised, they don't go through the rigid format of the writing process, but they are great activities for students. So the first one is a raft. Has anyone done this before? A raft assignment? No? I love this one. This is one of my favorites. A raft assignment is a creative writing assignment where students have to choose a role. So who's the writer? What perspective are they writing from? An audience. Who are they going to write to? Format. What format are they writing in? And a topic. So what are you writing about? And for the first time you do this with students, I would recommend assigning them either all 4 of these or maybe 2 out of the 4 or 3 out of the 4. Don't give them free choice from the beginning. But eventually, as they become more comfortable with the format, you can kind of take away the choices that you're giving them and allow them to be more creative. But an example of what this might look like would be, for example, a role could be a U.S. soldier stationed in France. The audience would be a wife at home. Format could be they could be writing a letter home. And the topic is the D-Day invasion. Another one, which I've actually had a student do before, which is really interesting, they wrote from a perspective of a plane, a Royal Air Force plane, so encourage students to write from the perspective of maybe inanimate objects. That can be a lot of fun. They could be talking to a pilot, to the pilot, flying the plane. They could be having just a conversation, so students can write this like a dialogue, which a lot of students like to do. So they can write a conversation, and the topic could be the D-Day invasion from the perspective of the plane. Something interesting. So the raft assignment is really versatile, and you can do it often. And you can give students a lot of choice or little choice. So yesterday's news is really cool. You can have students create a news broadcast, summarizing and presenting information from the previous day's lesson or previous day's topic, and they could present that. Again, they could write that like a dialogue too. Another good one is letters. Letters are pretty simple. I'm sure a lot of us have done something like this before. And an example of a letter would be write a letter to President Roosevelt telling him he needs to make liberating the concentration camp prisoners a priority. So they can write a letter to a person from the time period, from the perspective of another person at the time period. Sometimes I've had students just simply write a letter to their parents, telling their parents what they did or what they learned in school that day. And you can use that as a good assignment. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. What if scenarios, and these are a little more difficult. Students might have a hard time with this, but it's worth giving it a shot. And you can give them an alternate form of history and have them use what they know about the actual history to react to it. So, for example, what if Japan never bombed Pearl Harbor? Do you think the United States would have still entered World War II? The students would need to use information that they know about events leading up until the bombing of Pearl Harbor, particularly with the United States' relationship with England and Great Britain, to answer this question. And finally, this one is one of my favorites, and this one is more extensive, and it's called the Poetry for Two Voices. And I'm going to go into this one a little more in depth because it's very important, and it's a great activity to give our students an opportunity to work on. So all it is is it's two side-by-side poems written from two completely different perspectives on a similar event. So right from the beginning, students are engaging in multiple perspectives, which as historians, we know that's very important. We do that all the time, and sometimes our students need more work with engaging in opposite perspectives on the same topic. So students will read or examine documents, so it needs to be based on usually primary sources. And they'll write two side-by-side poems, but the key here is that some lines need to overlap. And I know this sounds confusing, and I have a couple actual student examples of it to make that clear. But the important things are they're reading two documents about the same issue virtually, or that lead to the same end. And they're from two different groups of people, or two different people from opposing sides. But some of the lines have to be the same, and I'll show you that. So for example, I've done this activity before on Japanese internment. And the two documents I had students read were the first one was the Day in Infamy speech, right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And the second one was the internment camp survivor testimony of Reiko Shimakomoto, talking about his time living in an internment camp. In addition to the Day in Infamy speech, you could also add something like the executive order that began the internment camps and the justification of the internment camps, that you could also use that document. I've used photographs before. So it does give students another example to look at primary sources, but the ultimate goal is a poem. So here's an actual student example of what this might look like. One perspective is from President Roosevelt, one column, and the second is in the voice of an interned Japanese American. So the way this would be read or presented is you would have two students read it together. One would read the lines of Roosevelt, they would alternate. The next one would read the interned Japanese American, their perspective, and then there's, if you can see it, there's lines that are mutual. So, Frank, can you help me read this?
Sure.
Do you want to read FDR and I'll read the interned Japanese American?
Sure.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you just move that thing in the bottom?
This? This?
Yeah, the other one. Yeah,
Sure.
okay, yeah.
Maybe I can.
You can just pull from the top. There you
Wait.
go.
I don't know.
There you
What's that? There. Alright, sorry. Cool.
go. I am the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy. They have destroyed my country.
I'm an innocent Japanese man, they've destroyed my life. And then together we would read,
They had
no reason to do this.
We have taken control of them. My people are scared.
They have taken control over us, my people are angry. We trusted them and they betrayed us.
It will take forever to rebuild the port. I have many things to attend to. We sent our troops.
It will take forever to rebuild my life. There is nothing for me to do here. They sent us to camps. I know it has been bad, but when this is over, I hope I can trust you. And this is an actual student's example. So I didn't write this, I didn't make this up. And you can see the important lines here are the ones in orange, the overlapping lines, where they're really challenging themselves and in these two completely opposite perspectives on the same thing, Japanese internment, they're finding similarities. So these feelings of betrayal, trust, and the fact that both sides think there was no rationale for this. There's no logical reason that this should have been done. This is another example. Another example. Okay. So you can just read this one silently, but this is another student example. And the poetry for two voices is really cool because they're using multiple perspectives, but they're doing it in the form of poetry. So most students would rather take a format like this than if you were to say, I want you to write about both perspectives on Japanese internment in a 3-paragraph essay. And not that there isn't a place for that, but you could even use this as a form of a pre-assignment leading up to a larger assignment. And they're using multiple perspectives, they're using primary source documents, and they're doing something that a lot of people a lot of adults have a really difficult time with, and that's finding common ground between two opposite sides. And that really is helpful for our students to practice with, because that's what citizenship is about as well. Okay, so writing at the end. So these are quick activities. Again, these are like your ticket out the doors. They're brief. They kind of wrap everything up. The first one is blast off. So blast off's pretty easy. You can choose to format this in any way you want. An example would be, write 3 interesting facts you learned today, 2 main ideas, and 1 question you still have. Just a quick recall of topics, and the important thing is the 1 question you still have. Because you can use that as feedback to help guide what you need to focus on the next lesson. Postcards are really good and they're really easy. So for example, send a postcard home from the perspective of a U.S. soldier stationed in the Pacific. If you were talking about the war in the Pacific, you could have a student write from the perspective of a soldier based on what you taught them today. They could write about a particular battle they witnessed. And that could be short, just a couple sentences to wrap it up. News headline, I love the news headline. Write a newspaper headline summarizing today's lesson. So that one's really good for students because they need to come up with a main idea and put it in a short newspaper headline. Clearest and muddiest point, shifted. What was the clearest point from today's lesson and muddiest? Muddiest meaning the most unclear. So what did they understand the best and what do they still really need to work on the next lesson? And again, the muddiest point is another way to help you guide what you need to focus on tomorrow and kind of meet your students where they are at in terms of comprehension. Any questions on this? Writing at the beginning, writing at the middle, writing at the end? So finally, to kind of wrap it all up, if you wouldn't mind completing the blast off, it's on the last page of your assignment, of your packet. What are 3 new things you learned? And you can keep it brief, maybe just give some strategies or ideas. What are 2 examples of where you can apply the strategies within your own content? So within your own historical topics you're going to have to cover in September. And what's a question or concern you still have? So maybe what's something that I didn't cover clear enough, or a concern you have about maybe implementing this in your own classroom. These are really great strategies to try and do every day. At least one. I'll give you a couple minutes. Okay, what's something new that you've learned today? You can just kind of shout it out. Yeah.
What is a
St. Queen?
Yes, and how you can use it in class as a pre-class to introduce a topic or go back over a topic you did in the previous class.
Awesome.
Writing to learn is unedited.
Yeah, that's an important thing. So, by keeping it unedited and brief, I think it takes a lot of the pressure off our students. And you're going to see, and I've seen that some of our students that struggle the most with writing, they're going to do the best on this. Because it doesn't mean that they're not understanding, they're just having a hard time getting everything down. And you're going to really be surprised, especially with the raft assignments. Some of the kids where you worry about their comprehension of the content are going to surprise you in a very pleasant way. And they're going to give you some of the best assignments that you'll see. How about a new example or an example of where you can apply it within your own content where you're going to be teaching?
I was thinking of the poetry for two voices with a thing like, say, I do Columbus. Like, Columbus's viewpoint on how he conquered, say, America as compared to one of the Native Americans and their viewpoint on their interaction with Columbus and doing a poem like that. That's what I thought.
That's an excellent one. Because I think that's a perspective, especially the Native American ones, that our students don't engage with enough. Frank, where do you want to apply it? Something?
I could probably use it for personal financial literacy, actually. Take stuff that's going on with rates and stuff and the economy and get kids thinking about it that way, that it does affect their life and they need to be
Yeah,
paying attention
absolutely.
to things.
So these are good ways too to like spice up some of the content that maybe we're not always too thrilled about teaching. Some of the stuff that gets a little old going over every single year. These are some interesting ways to make it different and to kind of put the critical thinking in the hands of the kids. Make them do the hard work. And a question or a concern you have, maybe something I missed or how I can help you.
I'm always worried about timing, how long things take. You got Tops always ticking as soon as you roll into class. So
It's hard.
What do you do? Writing versus content, how much time do you have?
But see, that's hard. And that's one of the things I struggle with because especially with the Common Core, we still have our content curriculum to cover too. So the literacy strategies are great, but you also need to spend time on the content. And I think as you start to do more writing to learn activities, it becomes easier to teach the content through the writing.
Also, if they linked up English, there's no history.
Right. So streamlining, so students read texts in, yeah. Timing is hard. So I would say at the beginning at least, while you're still trying to figure it out, focus on the activities at the beginning and the ones at the end. So the short, quick ones. But the raft assignments, you can throw those in whenever because students are getting a choice. So they're going to write about what they know. And the poetry for two voices, you can teach the content through that because you're giving them the primary source documents that they have to kind of decipher and read, and then they have to take it and put it into a writing assignment. So especially the poetry for two voices, you can use that to teach the perspective or pretty much everything you need about Columbus and how he viewed himself and the Native Americans. It's hard though. It is hard. That's the big question. So, I mean, it sounds great that we have this brand new literacy curriculum for social studies, but we're still getting tied down with content where we have to cover, thousands and thousands of years of history sometimes. So it is hard, but it's worth it. And my advice, wrapping that up, would be to start with the pre-class and ticket out the door assignments and see where you can work in the larger assignments later. Any more questions? Awesome. Thanks, guys.